Hi guys. Okay, so the question I get asked the most often is how do I paint? How do my pieces come out so smooth? And I just really want to show you how so easy it is and how quickly I get this done. I really don't spend a lot of time on painting. So I take my piece out of my laser intact. I do that by putting masking paper over it as soon as it's cut. And I just push it really firmly, make sure everything's stuck down there really well, and then I slowly peel it back, making sure all the pieces stay where they need to be. I save the masking paper because if I spray paint, I put my pieces on it. So, just make sure everything stays. And my board, this is 1/4 inch maple. My board was already sanded when I cut, but I always run a sanding block over it one more time. I just want everything nice and smooth. Okay, that's probably pretty good. I might just take a wipe and get rid of any little fibers. So that's probably the biggest tip, is to make sure that your wood is nice and smooth so that when the paint dries, you don't get a lot of those little fibers that stick up. I will also sand it usually after painting, but okay, let's just get started. Okay, so another thing that I think is a good tip for me. When I paint, I really like kind of a muted hue to my paint. I almost never use paint straight from the bottle. I always mix it with any kind of beige. It doesn't have to be an expensive paint, just these cheap, apple barrel paints. But I always like to put just a squeeze of beige or cream in my paint. I just prefer the way it makes the color. I never use paint without mixing it. I think that's what's difficult. A lot of people will message me and ask, for me to be specific with the paint colors I use, but I never use it from the bottle, so it's really hard to be specific. So I just use acrylic paints. Cheap craft paints are fine. These, I just got this set of acrylic paints from Amazon. You can see this whole set, I think there's 36 colors. It was like $22, but these are really nice thick paints. I really like the coverage I get from them. So let's see. Here's the box. If you're interested in looking them up on Amazon, I really like them a lot. I've only been using them for about a week, but they're great. So I'm going to start with these trees. So again, I will just do a squirt of color, and as you can see, it's really green. I don't like really bold colors. It's just my thing. So I am always mixing my own colors. And I'm just a really messy painter, but I'm just gonna start anywhere. I don't worry about, I hope you can see that. I don't worry about getting onto the border because I'm going to be spray painting that separately. That's just the way I draw my designs. They always have a thicker border. I like the way it sort of highlights the inner pieces, and that gets spray painted and it will cover up any of this paint. So I am fast and messy. There's no particular technique to putting the first coat on. Okay. So good, I got into all the corners. Even if I don't really mind because I'm gonna sand later. Okay, looks good. So I always take a baby wipe, not always, but most of the time. I'll take a baby wipe, and I just really like to get in there, and you're almost removing the paint. I like to push it to the corners, the edges, because I kind of like the darker colors staying on the edges. And this is nice because it blends your paint. And one thing to note, you don't want to put your paint on really thickly, because as it's drying, it's kind of locking these pieces in there, and I'm going to want to pop those out easily, so you don't want to really apply the paint too thickly. Okay, that looks great. Honestly, I do not even clean my brush in between colors. So let's get maybe a bluish. I'm constantly just trying colors. If something doesn't work out, it's no big deal. I also sometimes like to get some chalk paint in there. These Waverly ones are at Walmart. They're pretty inexpensive. I just think chalk paint is thick. It's nice. It gives you good coverage. I'm just gonna pull some of this out. It also sands nicely after you're finished painting. You can sand it, and it's not going to really remove a lot of that paint. It's just gonna smooth your piece. Okay. Just blending. I always pull in that beige, like I said. It's just kind of my preference. So I want this tree to be a lot different than the other one. Let's make it more blue. Squish off some of that excess paint. And again, just super quick. I think sometimes people think I spend a lot of time painting my designs, and I just don't. It's not really my favorite part of making a sign, so I like to get it done quickly, but still look nice. Okay, looks good. I got to all the edges. Great. Again, I'll take my baby wipe. Just gonna get in here and just kind of lightly rub. You can see you're losing some of your color. I like that. I'm just kind of pushing it out of the center and leaving it a little more covered on the edges. If it's a little piece like that, I'll just leave it alone. So I want a little bit more of the paint out of the main area. And if you wipe too much, just go back over it again with your brush. I don't mind that I've almost removed all the paint from the very edge there, because I would sand that after anyways to get a little unfinished edge. I'm really not too worried. Looks good. So go over here and get some of these other trees. I want kind of a dark tree in the center. I'm just still mixing paints. I just pull in colors from all kinds of dots I leave. Some brown, darken that up. Maybe a bit too dark. You can also just like kind of swipe on your board a little bit just to see if you're gonna like the color. Whoops. And I do, so I'm squishing off a little bit of my paint. And again, just super fast. It's almost a dry brush technique where your brush is almost completely dry. Just kind of getting as much paint off as you can. And it's perfectly fine if you have to just kind of squish it around. Okay, looks great. I think I need a new wipe. Just gonna rub that paint off. When I have a darker piece like this, if I've rubbed a lot of the paint off, sometimes I'll just go and touch up the edges and throw on a little more coverage. Okay, I like it. So on this side, I'm gonna want, remove this. Okay, I'm gonna want a little bit of blue in there, I think, to match the other side. I'm just gonna wipe my brush off. I don't go and clean it in between colors. Sometimes I will if it's a floral piece that has to be really specific colors and I don't want to mess it up. If it's for a customer, I'll just switch out my brushes, but mostly I'm just getting this done pretty quickly. Add a little more beige on here. I always use a beige, like I said. Okay, let's see what we get. Okay, I think that's good. I know trees aren't blue, but I don't care. That's what's nice about art. You can do anything you want. I actually think I'm gonna make one of these with pink and beige trees. I love that palette. Lots of times instead of a brush, I'll even just use a t-shirt to do this. Put my finger underneath the t-shirt and just rub it on there. It's even quicker, honestly, than with a brush. And for this technique too, you don't want to paint your whole piece and then go back and use the baby white because it starts to dry and then it's much harder to blend. So I just work in smaller sections. Okay, that's great. I love it. And one final tree. I think I'm gonna stay dark with this guy too. Remove this. And let's see. I'm going to get some, let's pull in some of this brown. Okay, squish off some of that extra color that's in there and blend that in. And I think I like it. Yeah, it's great. All right, looks fully covered. Okay, it's great. I love it. So I'm going to do the trunks, but the white, I really stay away from painting white by brush. I just prefer to do it with spray paint. I think I get a really nice coverage. Sometimes if I'm doing something I want to look really old, like I have one design that has a fence, I'll brush that because I like to mix in some dry strokes of different color. But for something like this, I know I'm gonna want this to stay pretty white. So I would just remove these. I don't have a knife with me right now, but I would just remove these pieces, pull these out, and go and spray paint them. So I'll probably do that next, but let's just get these trunks done. And again, I'll probably just use something already. That's too dark, but something already on my palette. I don't really worry too much for a piece like this. There are pieces that I am really much more careful with my colors, but this one with the trees is so easy. It's a bit dark. I kind of just move around my palette or my plate until I have a color I like. I think I want it darker. I actually don't like that. Okay, so I'm not happy with the colors I'm mixing. Just gonna wipe my brush off. Start over with a different color. This is a little bit more of a chestnut, not quite so dark. Throw in a little more beige. Oops. There. That's closer to what I wanted. Yeah, looks good. Again, I don't really care about getting onto the border. That's going to be spray painted. Okay, looks great. So I have everything the way I want it. I know that these colors are going to change because I am doing liquid glass on this piece, and it does tend to really deepen these colors. I think they're going to be beautiful. So I'm going to let this dry, and while I'm just letting everything get really dry, I'm going to take my bigger pieces out, take these outside and spray paint them. And actually, I usually have a knife ready, which I don't. Let's pull this out. So I'll just use my masking paper that I had and stick these on there, take them outside. I'll probably run a sanding block over them one more time. Spray paint these guys white. Oh, I should have grabbed a knife. It's okay. Okay, good. And this is when I'll just grab my border as well. This is going to be spray painted black, I think. I usually use gold, but for this one, I think I'm gonna go with black. Hopefully I like it. So because I didn't use too much paint, I can just pop these guys out. This probably had a little, there we go. So he's ready, and get this last piece. Make sure everything's staying where it needs to be, and then I'll take this outside and spray paint this also, and I will be back to show you how I assemble.